Hello everyone, can you hear me? Yeah, maybe a little bit too loud. So, good afternoon. I feel after this full house it's really going to be just few people, but I want to talk about API and API from a view of infrastructure guy. So a little bit about my background. So I was on operational side for a while.
We might get a little closer to
You cannot hear me?
Yeah, we hear you there. Maybe you want to
So I was on the operational side for a while, and I was with VMware for several years. So I was kind of able to look at both sides of customer side and vendor side. So, and I just want to share with you my observation about API. It's not a coding session at all. It's all about infrastructure guy dealing with software today. So, beginning of my career, basically it's what I was doing, right? So, it was looking at progress bar and waiting until it finishes. And I felt it really entertaining for a while. Then I moved to the next step, and actually I started this issuing command, and it was really cool, and everyone respected me because they couldn't issue with commands, right? So I probably got promoted to senior even, so I don't remember, but it was a really interesting way. Problem with both of these approaches, they don't scale, right? So, and right now when we move to public clouds, when it's mix of public and private clouds, when applications getting dropped to many different pieces, it's very difficult to manage everything from one point. So you cannot log into 100 different endpoints and do some kind of command line or UI configuration. So you need to come up with something more scalable. So my first eye-opening was actually in 2012 when VMware bought a company called Nisira. And being a network guy, I just realized that it's not necessary to be the same unit all the time. It can be actually decoupled. Management part and data plane. So, and it kind of opened all new world of thinking, right? So, okay, I don't need to go to every endpoint. I can configure everything. And I'm not really afraid if during my configuration my system crashes because data is still passing through. But basically another part of this decoupling was everything was doing its own job. So if you really specialize hardware or specialized virtual machine or specialized bare metal machines that responsible for traffic, so you put really good network cards, you put proper memory. For management, you need completely different sets of hardware. So next thing that come up a little bit later, it was software-oriented architecture. And actually, AWS really advertising it for developers, right? So how you go from monolithic application to just different pieces talking to each other. And beauty of it, they all talk through API. So you don't really need to wait 6 months until you put all changes in your application and test how it works. You can upgrade any module on its own. They must support backwards capability of talking to other elements, and other elements will get the same response, right? So if you never looked at software services-oriented architecture, there's a couple URLs here. I really recommend this. Pretty good videos from a couple years back at AWS. When they talk about how you drop monolithic application. So what happens if you put these two things together? Services-oriented architecture and software-defined networking. So you basically end up in an environment when you have several different applications from several different vendors that can talk to each other. And basically everyone does the best, provides the best information, best output. So if we're talking about network level, definitely hardware would be the best source of information what's happening with the network. If we're worrying about VMs or some kind of memory configuration, storage, we definitely go to vSphere and get this information from there, right? So, and all of these elements need some kind of universal language. So when someone tells me first time, and again, I'm an infrastructure guy, someone tells me first time API, I'm like, no. I just want to click, issue commands, I'm not going to write any code, right? So, and what I'm trying to cover here is basically how, as an infrastructure guy, without writing code, you can leverage API. And the most popular API today and easiest for not developers to use is a RESTful API. And RESTful API, basically, it's very simple elements. So you have 5 different methods, they call them methods, but they basically do 3 different things. You create object, you change object, and you destroy object. And because every object can have multiple characteristics, you cannot put everything in a URL. Yeah, and you can use RESTful API basically just executing from your browser. So also they support JSON and YAML where you can specify all configuration. This screen looks really messy, so there's a lot of different formatters that allow you to make it look much nicer. So now I just want to share with you a couple demos. So first demo about open project called Swagger. And basically what Swagger does, it connects to existing application, and basically there's some development that done in background. And you as a not coder, not developer, can easily create some specific API calls. So basically here right now, we're looking just at a very simple request when we get information about all virtual services configured in this environment. And because I already log in, so I get all these screens, but for my API call, I need to add credentials because when I execute it from some other instance, right, so I will not have these credentials. So I want my API call to actually have my credentials, encoded of course. So here is all fields you can fill up. Basically right now only required field is a version of API. So I put version of API, we try request, we get output of the request, we have URLs that we can just put in a browser, and we also get curl if you're trying to run it from command line. And yeah, so in the browser we put it, we get the same result, so it's output all virtual services configured on this specific machine. So let's do something more advanced. So let's look at specific virtual services, because here it's all of them defined in this YAML. So I just take specific UUID of the service, go back to Swagger, and instead of just get virtual services, I do get virtual services with UUID. So I get more specific on specific object in my configuration. So again, I put version of API, and another required field here is UUID. And now we will try to run this command not from the browser, we will try to run this command from basically Linux instance. So here it's already run it, so we know it's working, and we just copy this curl command, go to just regular Linux station. So in general, you don't need to do any changes, because in my demo environment, I didn't have proper certificates, so I needed to add one key to ignore SSL certificates. And then I run this command, and basically it should give me the same output. Again, because this output is not formatted, it looks a little bit confusing. So there's a multiple different Linux filters that allow you to make this output much better. So it's actually readable. So I ran it, so I made mistake here, and I didn't want to re-record the video, so I'll do it again. So and now you can see it's basically, come on, you can see it's exactly the same output what you get in normal screen. So basically any company who's based their product on API, they can use Swagger. I think they have 2 versions. They have open source version and they have paid version, and basically it allows you to do this kind of stuff. So next thing I would like just to touch here, let me start demo. So if your product built recently, it's a very good idea to build it for developers, to build it all components software-oriented architecture talking to each other using API. In this specific example, basically UI completely decoupled from the product. So UI executes API calls that would you execute from any other and get the same result. So in this case, basically, it's already moved. So basically, I just took URL, put it in a new browser, and I get API call. So basically, it was just copy from a URL. And I can run this. I can log into CLI, and CLI also talking to the product using API. So first, what I would do here, I execute command that basically the same command what I had in UI to show me all pools configured on the product. So there's 2 pools configured, and now I want specific on a second one because my API call in UI was specific to the second pool. So I get all results. Now how I transfer it to API call. So basically, because it's already talking in API environment, I just need to tell my software to display my API call details. So I execute the same command again. It gives me this output, but if I scroll up, I get JSON, and also you can see it's a RESTful API request, a method get, and it's exactly API call here. So now I basically can copy it and go back to my browser, and I will get exactly the same output. So it will not change because previously I copied it from UI, so it's exactly the same output. So a couple more things here, and if we have time, I'll have another demo where we can go through all API cycle to create object, change object, and basically delete object. So one other problem with APIs, every vendor creates their own set of APIs. So how your multiple products will be talking together? First time I've heard about API gateways when actually I was following a person who started Nicira, Martin Casado. He basically created a Nicira product, he created company, sold it to VMware, made it popular and left working for something else. So now he's working on a product called Conch, but I'm pretty sure there's multiple different API gateways. And what it basically does, it's a proxy and it does translation. So you can define multiple products, and if you know how each of them, what APIs they use, they can interfere with each other. So it's a whole idea behind making all of it not just product-centric, but your environment-centric. So another thing I heard a lot when I'm talking to any operational guys, we have too many dashboards, right? So every environment, you go in, you put new product, this product does this specific thing, and it has its own dashboard, right? So, but there's a limit, right? So you cannot run forever. So one of applications here would be using API calls just to pull data from different sources and represent them in the same monitoring tool. And it's idea of, I don't know, 5-10 years from now, if we can really pull it up and vendors actually will support API, and we can make it talking to each other. So ideally we will have this environment when all environments can talk to each other, get the best data from where this data actually belongs, and make decisions on it. So which brings it to next point of automation, basically self-healing. So if services is down, what you will do about it? And it's not necessarily company that is down is company that is responsible for fixing it, right? So there's a multiple different ecosystems that can work together to build the same environment. So because I have time, there's one more demo that I need to run from. Oh, actually, it's. Sorry. So in this demo, basically, we will create new service based on existing service, and not service profile, and everything using API. So I go to UI, I just look at this specific profile, and I want to copy it, right? So now back to Swagger, and sorry, API. So, but basically, I just run API to get network profiles. It's the same list I see in UI. And now I need only two specific fields. I need name and I need UUID. So I basically can use API to filter it and only return information that I need. So now I have UUID and name of the service. So back to Swagger. So by default, it's working on API services for virtual services, but I'm working on network profiles right now. So I switch to network profiles. Take the specific UUID of service I want to copy. And next thing we will do, we basically just, so it's with service. We basically run API call to get all information, all description of this service in a form of JSON. So not just network profile, specific network profile. So again, I put version and UUID. And looks like it stopped. Okay. So for some reasons it stopped, but basically I got a JSON response file, so I copied to Notepad and just delete all specific service data and change name to something more specific for this event. So vBrownBags. Copy it back, and now instead of a get operation, I will use actually create operation to create my new network profile. So post. And here I put all bodies that I just edited in Notepad. So it showed me how I would run curl. In this case, curl is so in response code to 200, so it means it worked. Now if I refresh a list of network profile, I get extra one, so it got created. If I renew UI, I also get extra profile here. So it doesn't matter how I access application. It's basically just I need to use the same language if I use UI, if I use CLI, or if I'm just using browser or curl. So now I want to remove this service. So here, because if I really use Swagger to credentials to my for my curl, but if I specify right UUID here, it would just destroy my service. But here I want to show you that actually you can do it through command line. To do it, everything request will be completely fine, but as UUID, I put some fake UUID, so it doesn't really, it cannot find this service. So I create curl, and only thing I need to change here is UUID of network profile, right? So copy it to my Linux instance. Okay, edit it first. So here I need to basically just change UUID to right one. It's here. So with these two UUIDs, there's only difference. One has prefix, another one doesn't. So replace it here, and I tested it in browser, so it basically returns the same result. I know it's correct. And I ignore certificates, I ignore SSL for my specific demo purpose. Put it here, run, And this is just completely just Linux instance. It doesn't have any specific software installed. The only thing I need is a curl. That's it. Nothing else. So now if I refresh the page, service is gone. And the same as in the UI. So again, it's very difficult to do it with a product that 10, 15 years old. So what I'm seeing here with old product, people now try to implement API, and what they do, they bolt it on. Problem with it, it doesn't support all commands. So I'm on VMware. I don't really want to go really hard on vSphere, but in my experience working for VMware, customers ask to provide some specific API call for vSphere. And you execute it, and you get results, and now they want to do something more specific with specific VM, with specific object in VM. And you go back to developers and you ask them, what would be API call? And they're like, oh, it's not implemented yet. So we need to actually add it to this specific unit that's responsible for API. But it's not a problem with more modern application when you already have all components talk to each other. So basically everything what you're doing through UI or through command line, it's already implemented, right? So, and idea here basically to follow this pattern, and if we have more and more products that support API and can talk to each other, we will get better operational results, and hopefully we can add some logic and automation. That's basically all I wanted to tell you today, and yeah, so any questions? I know we have extra few minutes.